Commander Kethevara floated in the center of the command bridge, her forearms moving in smooth patterns across the bio-neural interface that connected her directly to the ship's living systems. The walls of the Zephyrian vessel pulsed with a soft blue light, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Around her, 20 other crew members worked in perfect silence, their thoughts flowing through the ship's neural network like water through coral. The exploration fleet had been traveling for 3 standard cycles, mapping the outer edges of what their star charts called the vacant sector. It was a region of space that their long-range surveys had marked as empty of intelligent life, suitable for mining operations or perhaps a new colony world. The Zephyrians had done this hundreds of times before. Find empty space, check for resources, establish contact protocols with any primitive species they might encounter, and then move on to the next sector. It was routine work, peaceful work. The kind of work that had made the Zephyrian Cooperative one of the most respected civilizations in the galaxy. In 3,000 years of space travel, they had never encountered a species that posed any real threat. Most aliens they met were either too primitive to understand space travel, or were already part of the greater galactic community that valued trade and knowledge over conflict. "Commander," called out Science Officer Velthara from her station near the observation deck. "We have detected artificial energy signatures, distance approximately 2 light minutes from our current position." Kethevara felt a familiar excitement flow through the ship's neural network. First contact was always an interesting experience. She had personally overseen 17 such encounters during her long career, and each one had brought new knowledge and friendship to her people. "What type of signatures are you reading?" she asked, her mental voice flowing through the ship's consciousness to reach every crew member at once. "Unknown configuration, Commander. The energy patterns do not match any species in our database. The vessel appears to be constructed from metallic compounds rather than bio-integrated materials. Quite primitive in design, but functional." Kethevara nodded to herself. Another young species, probably just learning to travel between stars. The galaxy was full of such civilizations, and the Zephyrians took pride in helping them develop peacefully. Her fleet of 5 exploration vessels was perfectly equipped for this kind of work. Each ship was grown rather than built, shaped from living coral that could adapt to any environment and heal itself from minor damage. The vessels were beautiful to look at, flowing through space like schools of luminescent fish. "Begin standard first contact protocols," she commanded. "Broadcast mathematical sequences on all common frequencies. Include our standard cultural package with artistic and scientific achievements. And Velthara, make sure our translation computers are ready to process their response." The alien vessel appeared on their main display screen as they drew closer. Kethevara studied it with professional interest. It was indeed a crude-looking thing, all sharp angles and visible weapon ports. The hull was made of some kind of dark metal, scarred and pitted as if it had seen much use. Strange markings covered its surface, and several antenna-like projections extended from various points along its length. "The design suggests a species that expects conflict," observed Tactical Officer Morthieve. "Look at those weapon emplacements. They are quite obvious, not integrated into the hull design at all. Perhaps they come from a system with dangerous wildlife," suggested Velthara. "Some species need to defend themselves during their early development phases." Kethevara found this explanation reasonable. The galaxy contained many dangerous creatures, and young civilizations often had to fight for survival before they learned to live in harmony with their environment. The Zephyrians themselves had gone through such a phase, though it was so long ago that most had forgotten those dark times. "Commander, we are receiving a response to our mathematical sequences," announced Communications Officer Yethtal. "The alien vessel is transmitting complex mathematical proofs and— Wait, this is unusual. They are also sending what appears to be linguistic analysis of our cultural package. Their translation algorithms are extremely sophisticated." "How sophisticated?" asked Kethevara. "They have already begun transmitting messages in basic Zephyrian script. Commander, these beings learned our language structure in less than 10 minutes. That level of computational ability suggests a very advanced artificial intelligence system." Kethevara felt a flutter of surprise through the ship's neural network. Most species took days or even weeks to establish basic communication. These aliens were clearly more advanced than their crude-looking vessel suggested. The main screen flickered and suddenly it displayed text in perfect Zephyrian script. "Greetings to the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Meridian. We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization and hope to establish positive relations between our species. Fascinating, murmured Velthara. Not only have they learned our language, but they somehow identified our species and our purpose. Their scanning technology must be quite advanced. Kethvara composed a response, carefully following the standard protocols her people had developed over centuries of first contact situations. Captain Vasquez, we greet you in the name of the Zephyrian Cooperative and the greater galactic community. We are honored to make contact with humanity. Our mission is one of peaceful exploration and cultural exchange. We would be pleased to share knowledge of our civilizations. The response came quickly. Commander Kethvara, we share your desire for peaceful relations. Our species has great respect for exploration and scientific advancement. We would be honored to learn more about Zephyrian culture and technology. They know my name, Kethvara noted to her crew. Their intelligence-gathering capabilities are impressive. Perhaps too impressive, I warned Morthieve. A species that can scan our ships and identify individual crew members might pose a security risk. Nonsense, replied Kethvara. Advanced scanning is a sign of scientific achievement, not military threat. Remember, we can do the same thing with our bioscanners. For the next several hours, the two vessels exchanged information about their respective cultures. The humans were surprisingly forthcoming about their civilization. They described a species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, originating from a single world they called Earth. Their society was organized into multiple political units that had learned to work together for space exploration. They valued individual freedom highly, but also believed in cooperation for the greater good. What impressed Kethvara most was their hunger for knowledge. The humans asked detailed questions about Zephyrian science, philosophy, and art. They wanted to understand everything from how bioships were grown to what other species existed in the galaxy. Their curiosity reminded her of her own people during their early years of space travel. Captain Vasquez has made an interesting proposal, announced Yethtal suddenly. She is inviting our fleet to visit their primary naval formation for a formal diplomatic meeting. Kethvara felt excitement ripple through the ship's consciousness. A formal meeting with the human fleet would be an honor, and it would allow for much more detailed cultural exchange than was possible with ship-to-ship communication. Where is this meeting to take place? She asked. 3 hyperspace jumps from our current position. Captain Vasquez states that their fleet is currently conducting training exercises in that system. She apologizes for any inconvenience but explains that their command structure requires formal meetings to take place with proper military representation present. Kethvara considered this information. Many species had complex military traditions, especially younger civilizations that still remembered their conflicts. The fact that the humans wanted proper military representation suggested they took diplomacy seriously. Very well, she decided. Send our acceptance. Tell Captain Vasquez that we are honored by their invitation and look forward to meeting their fleet commanders. As her crew began preparing for the hyperspace jumps, Kethvara felt satisfied with how the first contact had proceeded. The humans seemed like a promising species, advanced enough to be interesting but young enough to benefit from Zephyrian guidance. In a few days they would meet the human fleet and begin the process of welcoming another species into the galactic community. None of them had any idea what they were about to encounter. The first hyperspace jump went smoothly. Kethvara's fleet of 5 bioships slipped through the dimensional barrier like fish diving through water, their living hulls adapting automatically to the strange physics of faster-than-light travel. The neural networks that connected each crew to their vessel hummed with quiet satisfaction as they emerged in normal space exactly where their calculations had predicted. Jump completed successfully, reported Navigation Officer Quilzeth. All ships reporting normal status. 2 more jumps to reach the meeting coordinates. Kethvara floated in her command position, reviewing the cultural files they had compiled about humanity during the journey. The humans were indeed fascinating. Their technology seemed to follow completely different principles from anything in the galactic database. Where most advanced species had learned to work with living systems, humanity appeared to have mastered the art of working with dead materials like metal and silicon. It is quite remarkable, observed Science Officer Velthara as she studied the technical data the humans had shared. They have achieved faster-than-light travel using purely mechanical systems. No bioneural interfaces, no living computational matrices, just raw engineering and mathematical precision. Different does not mean inferior, Kethavara reminded her crew. The galaxy has room for many approaches to technology. Perhaps we can learn something from their methods. The second jump brought them to a system with a young blue star surrounded by several gas giants. Long-range sensors detected mining operations on some of the moons, but nothing unusual. The human ship Meridian was waiting for them at the edge of the system. Exactly as promised. Captain Vasquez sends her greetings, announced Communications Officer Yethtal. She reports that her fleet is prepared to receive us and that their command staff is looking forward to the meeting. How large is their fleet? Asked Kethavara. In her experience, most species considered 10 to 20 ships to be a substantial military force. The Zephyrian Cooperative maintained a defensive fleet of approximately 50 vessels, spread across their entire territory, and that was considered more than adequate for any conceivable threat. Captain Vasquez did not specify exact numbers, replied Yethtal. She mentioned that they are conducting training exercises and that we should not be alarmed by the level of activity we will observe. Tactical Officer Morthieve shifted uncomfortably at his station. Commander, I recommend we keep our shields raised and weapons ready during this encounter. We know very little about human military capabilities. Absolutely not, Kethavara responded firmly. We are guests here and we will behave as such. Raising shields would be interpreted as a hostile act by any reasonable species. The humans have shown nothing but courtesy and peaceful intentions. As they prepared for the final jump, Kethavara felt a mixture of excitement and professional curiosity. First contact with a military fleet was always more complex than meeting individual exploration vessels, but it also provided valuable insights into how a species approached concepts like defense and cooperation. All ships report ready for hyperspace transition, announced Quilzeth. Coordinates confirmed. Jump commencing in 30 seconds. The bioships hummed with anticipation as their living systems prepared for the dimensional shift. Kethavara had made this journey thousands of times, but she never grew tired of the strange sensation of stepping outside normal space and time. Jump commencing now. Reality folded around them, and for a brief moment Kethavara felt her consciousness expand to touch the infinite possibilities of hyperspace. Then they were back in normal space and her awareness snapped back to the confines of her ship. Jump completed, reported Quilzeth. We have arrived at the designated coordinates. Excellent. Begin scanning for the human fleet. They should be somewhere in this system. Velthara bent over her sensor console, her forearms dancing across the bioneural interface as she directed the ship's scanning arrays. For several seconds, she worked in concentrated silence. Then she stopped moving entirely. Velthara? Asked Kethavara. What is your status? Commander, Velthara said slowly, I am detecting some unusual readings. The gravitational sensors are showing massive distortions throughout the system. I think there may be a malfunction in our equipment. Run a full diagnostic, ordered Kethavara. We cannot afford to have faulty sensors during a first contact situation. Diagnostic complete. All systems are functioning normally. Velthara's voice carried a note of confusion that rippled through the ship's neural network. Commander, the readings are accurate. There are massive objects throughout this system. Hundreds of them. Possibly thousands. Kethavara felt a chill run through her consciousness. Define massive objects. Artificial constructs, each one larger than our biggest motherships. Commander, the energy signatures suggest this cannot be correct. Show me. The main display screen flickered to life, showing a tactical map of the local system. What Kethavara saw made her question her own sanity. Spread across the star system in perfect geometric formations were not dozens, but thousands of contacts. Each one registered as a massive artificial construct with active power systems and defensive capabilities. This must be an error, she whispered. No species maintains a fleet of this size. Navigation Officer Quilzeth spoke up from his station, his mental voice tight with disbelief. Commander, I am receiving similar readings from all 5 ships in our fleet. The sensor data is consistent across all platforms. But this is impossible, protested Morthieve. The energy requirements alone would drain the resources of an entire star system. How could any species afford to build and maintain such a force? Kethavara stared at the display, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The largest fleet action in recorded galactic history, had involved perhaps 200 ships from a dozen different species working together to evacuate a dying world. What she was looking at suggested a military force that could conquer half the galaxy. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Captain Vasquez," announced Yethtal. "Put it through." The familiar voice of the human captain filled the bridge, as calm and friendly as it had been during their first contact. "Commander Kethvara, welcome to the Kepler 442 system. I hope your journey was comfortable. We are pleased to have you here." "Captain Vasquez," Kethvara managed to say, "our sensors are detecting a large number of vessels in this system. Are these all human ships?" "Yes, this is the third human battle fleet. We are currently conducting routine training exercises, as I mentioned. I hope the activity level will not be too distracting during our diplomatic meetings." "Third Fleet." The words echoed through Kethvara's consciousness like a physical blow. If this was their third fleet, how many ships did humanity possess in total? "Captain," she said carefully, "could you provide us with the exact size of your fleet? Our sensors may be malfunctioning." There was a pause before Captain Vasquez responded, and when she did, her tone carried a note of mild surprise. "Oh, I am sorry. I thought we had included that information in our diplomatic package. The third battle fleet currently consists of 2,847 active vessels of various classes. We are expecting to receive an additional 400 ships next month, when the new construction cycle completes." The bridge of Kethvara's ship fell into absolute silence. Even the bio-neural network seemed to pause in shock. Nearly 3,000 ships in a single fleet. The number was so large it was difficult to comprehend. "Captain Vasquez," Kethvara said slowly, "how many fleets does humanity maintain?" "Currently, we have 12 full battle fleets plus various smaller specialized formations. The third fleet is actually one of our medium-sized formations. The first and second fleets are considerably larger." Kethvara felt her world shifting around her. Everything she thought she knew about military power, about the balance of forces in the galaxy, had just been proven completely wrong. Humanity was not a young species learning to explore space. They were a military superpower unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Commander," whispered Morthieve, "what have we walked into?" Before Kethvara could respond, Captain Vasquez's voice continued with the same friendly tone. "We have prepared quarters for your diplomatic team aboard our flagship. Would you prefer to dock with us directly, or would you like us to send a shuttle to transport your representatives?" Kethvara realized that she was about to make the most important decision of her career. How she responded to this invitation would determine not just the fate of her crew, but possibly the future relationship between humanity and every other species in the galaxy. "We would be honored to visit your flagship, Captain," she heard herself saying. "Please send us docking instructions." As her crew began preparing for the transfer, Kethvara stared at the tactical display showing thousands of human warships. She was about to step aboard the flagship of a military force that could probably conquer her entire civilization without breaking a sweat, and they were treating her as an honored guest. The human shuttle arrived exactly on schedule, a sleek, metallic craft that moved with mechanical precision through space. Unlike the flowing, organic movements of Zephyrian vessels, it traveled in straight lines and sharp turns, following what appeared to be pre-programmed flight paths. Kethvara watched it dock with her ship and marveled at the engineering precision involved in the maneuver. "The shuttle pilot requests permission to board," announced Communications Officer Yethtal. She has identified herself as Lieutenant Sarah Chen of the UES Titan. "Permission granted. Standard diplomatic protocols apply." Kethvara had chosen 3 officers to accompany her to the human flagship: Science Officer Veltara for her analytical skills, Communications Officer Yethtal for her linguistic abilities, and surprisingly, Tactical Officer Morthieve. She wanted someone who understood military systems to observe and report on what they were about to see. The human pilot was a small female with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a uniform of dark blue fabric with various insignia that probably indicated rank and specialization. What struck Kethvara immediately was how young she looked. Among the Zephyrians, only the most experienced officers were trusted with diplomatic transport duties. "Commander Kethvara," the pilot said in perfect Zephyrian, bowing slightly in what their cultural files had indicated was a human gesture of respect. "I am Lieutenant Chen. I will be your pilot today. The journey to the Titan will take approximately 20 minutes. As they boarded the shuttle, Kethavara noted the stark differences between human and Zephyrian design philosophies. Where Zephyrian interiors flowed like the inside of a living organism, the human shuttle was all straight lines and geometric shapes. Every surface appeared to serve a specific function, with no decoration that did not also provide some practical benefit. "Lieutenant," asked Velthara as they settled into their seats, "how many personnel serve aboard your flagship?" "The Titan carries a crew of 12,000, ma'am," Lieutenant Chen replied as she began the departure sequence. "She is one of our newer Sovereign-class dreadnoughts, quite a bit larger than the older models. 12,000 crew members on a single ship." Kethavara tried to process this information. The largest Zephyrian vessel ever constructed had carried fewer than 500 people, and that had been considered a massive undertaking that strained their resources for years. As the shuttle pulled away from the Zephyrian fleet, Kethavara got her first close look at the human formation. What she saw through the viewport made her breath catch in her throat. Ships stretched away in every direction, arranged in perfect geometric patterns that extended beyond the limits of her vision. Some were sleek vessels that looked like they were built for speed and maneuverability. Others were massive blocky constructs that could only be described as mobile fortresses. "Impressive, is it not?" Lieutenant Chen said, noticing her passenger's fascination. "Admiral Harrison has been working on these formations for months. The coordination required is quite complex." "How do you coordinate so many vessels?" asked Morthieve, his tactical mind struggling to comprehend the logistics involved. "Advanced AI systems handle most of the moment-to-moment coordination," Chen explained. "But the strategic planning is all human. Admiral Harrison believes that artificial intelligence should assist human decision-making, not replace it." As they flew deeper into the fleet formation, Kethavara began to understand the true scale of what humanity had built. The ships were organized into distinct groups, each one larger than most planetary defense forces. She counted carrier groups with hundreds of smaller craft swarming around massive central vessels. She saw supply ships that were themselves larger than Zephyrian cruisers. Most disturbing of all, she saw weapons platforms that appeared to exist for no purpose other than delivering devastating firepower. "Lieutenant Chen," she said carefully, "what is the purpose of this fleet? Are you expecting to encounter hostile forces?" The young pilot seemed genuinely surprised by the question. "Oh no, ma'am. This is just a training exercise. We run these every few months to keep our coordination skills sharp. Most of the time our fleets are spread out across human space maintaining regular patrols. Just a training exercise." The words echoed in Kethavara's mind as she watched a formation of what had to be 1,000 fighter craft execute a complex maneuver in perfect unison. If this was just practice, what would an actual human military operation look like? "There she is," announced Lieutenant Chen, "the UES Titan." Kethavara looked ahead and felt her world shift once again. The human flagship was not just large, it was incomprehensibly massive. It stretched away in front of them like a metallic mountain floating in space. Weapon turrets dotted its hull like the spines of some mechanical creature. Hangar bays large enough to hold entire Zephyrian ships opened and closed as fighters and shuttles moved in and out. The energy readings from its power systems suggested capabilities that exceeded anything in her experience. "How large is this vessel?" whispered Velthara. "The Titan is 8 kilometers long and masses approximately 50 million tons," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "She is designed to serve as a mobile command center for fleet operations. Her main batteries can engage targets at ranges exceeding 200 light seconds. 8 kilometers long. Kethavara had visited space stations smaller than this ship, and according to their sensor readings, there were dozens of similar vessels scattered throughout the fleet formation. As they approached the docking bay, Kethavara caught sight of the activities taking place around them. Massive formations of ships were moving with clockwork precision, practicing what could only be described as battle maneuvers on a scale that defied imagination. She watched a group of cruisers execute a coordinated bombardment of empty space, their weapons creating light shows that briefly outshone the local star. "Is this level of firepower typical for your military exercises?" asked Morthieve. "This is actually a relatively light exercise," Chen replied. "We are only using about 60% of our standard weapons load today. Admiral Harrison wanted to make sure we did not alarm any commercial traffic that might be passing through the region." Light exercise, 60% weapons load. The implications of these casual statements hit Kethavara like physical blows. Humanity was demonstrating more military power than she had ever imagined possible, and they considered it a minor training event. The shuttle settled into the docking bay with mechanical precision. As the bay doors closed behind them, Kethvara noticed that the space was large enough to hold her entire exploration fleet with room to spare. Robotic systems and human technicians worked together to service dozens of craft similar to their shuttle. "Welcome aboard the Titan," said Lieutenant Chen as she powered down the shuttle systems. "Captain Vasquez is waiting to greet you in the main reception area. Admiral Harrison sends his apologies, but he is currently coordinating the exercise from the command center." As they disembarked, Kethvara was struck by the level of activity surrounding them. Human personnel moved with purpose and efficiency, maintaining and preparing equipment that she was only beginning to understand. The technology on display was impressive not just for its power, but for its sophistication and obvious reliability. Captain Vasquez was waiting for them as promised, flanked by several other officers in the same dark blue uniforms. She was a middle-aged human female with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. "Commander Kethvara," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Titan. I hope your journey was comfortable." "Captain Vasquez," Kethvara replied, carefully mimicking the hand gesture. "We are honored to be here. Your vessel is quite impressive." "Thank you. We are very proud of her. She represents the latest in human naval engineering. Would you like a tour before we begin our formal discussions?" As they began walking through the corridors of the massive ship, Kethvara realized that she was about to see things that would fundamentally change her understanding of what was possible in the galaxy. The humans had not just built a military force, they had created something that redefined the very concept of power. And they were treating her like an honored guest while doing it. The tour that followed would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. The tour began in what Captain Vasquez called the non-sensitive areas of the ship. Even these supposedly routine sections left Kethvara struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. The corridors of the Titan were wide enough for ground vehicles to pass through, and they stretched in perfectly straight lines that seemed to continue forever. Human crew members moved with practiced efficiency, their footsteps echoing off metal walls that showed no signs of wear despite obvious heavy use. The Titan houses 12,000 crew members during normal operations, Captain Vasquez explained as they walked. During extended missions, we can accommodate up to 15,000. Each crew member has private quarters, and we maintain full recreational and educational facilities. Kethvara tried to imagine the logistics involved in feeding, housing, and coordinating 15,000 individuals on a single vessel. The largest Zephyrian city had fewer than 50,000 inhabitants, and they lived on the surface of a planet with unlimited resources. "How do you maintain such a large crew?" asked Science Officer Velthara. "The resource requirements must be enormous." "The Titan is essentially a mobile city," Vasquez replied. "We maintain our own manufacturing facilities, food production systems, and even entertainment complexes. We can operate independently for up to 18 months without resupply." They passed through what appeared to be a shopping district, complete with stores, restaurants, and recreational facilities. Human crew members moved about their daily routines, some clearly off-duty and enjoying leisure time. Children played in a park-like area under artificial sunlight. Kethvara realized that these people did not just work on this ship. They lived here, raised families here, built entire lives within its metal walls. "Captain," said Tactical Officer Morthieve, "may I ask about your defensive systems?" Vasquez smiled. "I can show you some of our point defense arrays. They are quite impressive." She led them to an observation deck that looked out over a section of the ship's hull. What Kethvara saw there made her question everything she thought she knew about space combat. The hull was covered with hundreds of weapon systems, ranging from small rapid-fire guns to massive turrets that could have served as the main armament on Zephyrian warships. "These are just our close-in defense systems," Vasquez explained casually. "They are designed to intercept incoming missiles and fighter craft. Our main weapons are much larger." "How much larger?" whispered Morthieve. "Would you like to see?" They followed her to another observation area, this one looking forward along the ship's massive length. Kethvara found herself staring at weapon turrets that were each the size of small buildings. The barrels of the guns were so large that she could have flown her entire ship through them. "Our main battery consists of 24 800 mm particle beam cannons," Vasquez said with obvious pride. Each one can deliver the energy equivalent of a small nuclear weapon with perfect accuracy, at ranges up to 200 light seconds. We also carry 400 missile tubes loaded with various warhead types. Kethvara did quick calculations in her head. The firepower of this single ship exceeded the combined military capability of the entire Zephyrian cooperative. And according to their sensor readings, there were dozens of similar vessels in this fleet alone. "Captain Vasquez," she said carefully, "what enemy requires this level of firepower to defeat?" The human captain looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Enemy? Oh, we are not fighting anyone at the moment. This is just standard fleet composition. We believe in being prepared for any contingency." Any contingency. Kethvara wondered what kind of contingency would require the firepower to destroy entire star systems. As they continued the tour, she began to understand that the humans had not just built weapons, they had created a completely different philosophy of military preparedness. Every system had backups. Every backup had its own backup. They had planned for scenarios that most species could not even imagine. "Commander," announced Communications Officer Yethtal suddenly, "I am receiving a priority transmission from our fleet. They report unusual activity in the human formation." Captain Vasquez checked a device on her wrist. The exercise is moving to the next phase. Admiral Harrison is about to demonstrate our fleet coordination capabilities. Would you like to observe from our command center?" The command center of the Titan was unlike anything Kethvara had ever seen. Hundreds of human officers worked at stations that displayed more information than she could process. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the fleet, along with their status, capabilities, and current assignments. At the center of it all stood a tall human male with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "Admiral Harrison," said Captain Vasquez, "may I present Commander Kethvara of the Zephyrian Cooperative?" The Admiral turned and offered the human hand gesture. "Commander, welcome to the Third Fleet. I hope our exercises are not too disruptive to your diplomatic mission." "Not at all, Admiral. We are honored to observe." Harrison nodded to one of his officers. "Begin Phase 2 of the exercise." What happened next defied every assumption Kethvara had ever made about space combat. The holographic displays showed the entire fleet moving in perfect coordination. Thousands of ships executing complex maneuvers with mechanical precision. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers in formations so vast they looked like swarms of insects. Supply ships moved to new positions while defensive screens adjusted to protect them. "Target acquisition complete," reported one of the officers. "All batteries report ready to fire." "Very good. Execute planned barrage on designated asteroid targets." Kethvara watched the tactical display as hundreds of ships fired simultaneously. The asteroid belt at the edge of the system lit up like a stellar explosion, as thousands of weapons found their targets. Rocks that had existed for billions of years simply ceased to exist, reduced to subatomic particles by the concentrated firepower of the human fleet. "Exercise complete," reported the tactical officer. "All targets eliminated. No friendly fire incidents. Ammunition expenditure within acceptable parameters." Admiral Harrison turned to Kethvara with a satisfied expression. "A successful exercise. Our coordination is improving." Kethvara stared at the display, trying to process what she had just witnessed. The humans had just demonstrated the ability to eliminate an entire asteroid field in a matter of minutes. The energy expenditure involved was beyond calculation. "Admiral," she managed to say, "how many fleets like this does humanity maintain?" "Currently, we have 12 full battle fleets," Harrison replied, "plus various specialized formations for different mission requirements. The Third Fleet is actually one of our smaller formations. The First and Second Fleets are significantly larger. 12 fleets, each one capable of destroying entire civilizations." Kethvara felt the universe shifting around her as she began to understand the true scope of human military power. "Admiral," asked Morthieve, "what threat requires such massive military preparations?" Harrison looked at him with an expression that mixed surprise with something that might have been sadness. "Commander, with respect, that is exactly the wrong question. The correct question is, what threats might we face that we have not yet imagined?" "I do not understand." "The universe is a dangerous place," Harrison said quietly. "We have learned that it is better to be over-prepared for threats that never come than to be underprepared for threats that do." As they prepared to return to their shuttle, Kethvara realized that everything she thought she knew about the galaxy had changed. Humanity was not just another species to be welcomed into the galactic community. They were a force of nature that could reshape the balance of power throughout known space, and they were treating her as a friend, while demonstrating why no one should ever consider treating them as an enemy. The implications of this revelation would haunt her for the rest of her life. The formal diplomatic meeting took place in a conference room that could have hosted representatives from a dozen species simultaneously. Kethavara sat across from Captain Vasquez and Admiral Harrison, with her 3 officers flanking her at the polished metal table. The contrast between the humans' casual confidence and her own crew's barely controlled anxiety was obvious to everyone in the room. "Commander," Admiral Harrison began, "I hope our demonstration has given you a good understanding of human military capabilities. We believe in transparency with our potential allies." Potential allies. The words carried implications that Kethavara was only beginning to understand. The humans were not asking to join the galactic community as junior partners. They were offering to participate as equals, despite being newcomers to interstellar civilization. "Admiral," she said carefully, "your capabilities are indeed impressive. May I ask why humanity has chosen to maintain such extensive military forces?" Harrison and Vasquez exchanged a look that spoke of shared experiences and hard-learned lessons. The Admiral leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming thoughtful. "Commander, may I tell you about Earth?" For the next hour, Kethavara listened to a story that fundamentally changed her understanding of what it meant to be human. Harrison spoke of a world that had faced extinction dozens of times throughout its history. Asteroid impacts that had wiped out entire species. Ice ages that had nearly frozen the planet solid. Volcanic eruptions that had blotted out the sun for years at a time. But more than natural disasters, he spoke of humanity's own capacity for destruction. Wars that had killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Environmental damage that had nearly made their planet uninhabitable. A species that had come within decades of rendering itself extinct through its own actions. "We learned something important during those dark times," Harrison said quietly. "Peace is not the natural state of the universe. Peace is something that must be protected, maintained, and when necessary, fought for." "But surely," protested Science Officer Velthara, "rational beings can resolve their differences through negotiation and compromise." Captain Vasquez smiled sadly. "Officer Velthara, I admire your optimism, but we have learned that not all beings are rational, and not all conflicts can be resolved through words. Sometimes the only thing that prevents violence is the certainty that violence will be met with overwhelming force." Kethavara felt a chill run through her consciousness. The humans were describing a philosophy of deterrence that was completely alien to Zephyrian thinking. Her people had achieved peace through cooperation and understanding. The humans had achieved peace through strength and the threat of mutual destruction. "Admiral," she asked, "do you believe that conflict with other species is inevitable?" "Not inevitable," Harrison replied, "but possible." "Commander, you mentioned that your people have encountered dozens of species during your expansion into space. How many of those species did you encounter during periods of active warfare?" Kethavara considered the question. "None. All of the species we have met have been peaceful." "Exactly. You have been fortunate to expand during a time of relative galactic peace. But peace does not last forever. Sooner or later your people will encounter a species that does not share your values, a species that sees your peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited rather than strength to be admired." The implications of his words hung in the air like a physical presence. Kethavara realized that the humans were not just describing their own history. They were predicting the future of galactic civilization. "What do you propose?" she asked. "Partnership," said Captain Vasquez. "The galaxy is about to change, Commander. The age of easy expansion and peaceful first contact is coming to an end. When that time comes, species like yours will need allies who understand how to fight." Tactical Officer Morthieve spoke up for the first time during the meeting. "Are you offering to protect us?" Admiral Harrison shook his head. "We are offering to teach you to protect yourselves. The Zephyrian Cooperative has achieved remarkable things through peaceful cooperation. But cooperation only works when all parties choose to participate. What happens when you encounter a species that chooses conquest instead?" The question hit Kethavara like a physical blow. In 3,000 years of space travel, her people had never seriously considered the possibility of meeting a hostile alien civilization. Their entire philosophy was based on the assumption that all intelligent life would naturally choose cooperation over conflict. "What if you are wrong?" she asked. "What if the galaxy remains peaceful? Then we will have wasted enormous resources building weapons we never needed," Harrison admitted. "But if we are right and we are unprepared, then peaceful species like yours will face extinction." The meeting continued for several more hours, covering topics that ranged from technology sharing to mutual defense agreements. But the core message remained constant. Humanity was offering to share their knowledge of warfare in exchange for partnership in exploration and diplomacy. As the formal discussions concluded, Captain Vasquez made a personal request. "Commander, would you be willing to join me for a private conversation? There are some things I would like to discuss away from the formal diplomatic setting." They walked to a small observation lounge overlooking the fleet formation. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Kethavara could see hundreds of ships maintaining their perfect formations, a reminder of the overwhelming power that humanity had placed at the disposal of people like Captain Vasquez. "Commander," Vasquez said quietly, "I want you to understand something important. Everything you have seen here today, all of this power and preparation, it comes from fear." "Fear?" "Fear that we will not be strong enough when the test comes. Fear that we will fail to protect the people we care about. Fear that our peaceful nature will be seen as an invitation for attack." Vasquez paused, staring out at the fleet. "We do not want to be the strongest military force in the galaxy. We feel that we have to be." Kethavara studied the human captain's face, seeing something there that she had not expected: vulnerability. Despite all their power, despite their overwhelming military superiority, the humans were afraid. "What are you afraid of?" she asked. "The unknown," Vasquez replied. "Commander, your people have been exploring space for 3,000 years, and you have encountered nothing but peaceful species. That is remarkable, and it gives me hope for the future, but it also makes me concerned. Why? Because the universe is a big place. Somewhere out there, in the dark between the stars, there are species that chose a different path than yours. Species that see the galaxy as something to be conquered rather than explored. Species that view other civilizations as obstacles to be removed rather than friends to be made." Vasquez turned to face her directly. "When you meet those species, and you will meet them eventually, what will you do?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. Kethavara realized that she was facing a choice that would determine the future of her entire civilization. Should the Zephyrians maintain their peaceful philosophy and hope that diplomacy would be enough? Or should they learn from humanity and prepare for conflicts they hoped would never come? "I need to return to my people," she said finally. "This decision is too important for me to make alone." "Of course. But Commander, remember this. The choice to prepare for war is not the same as the choice to wage war. We hope that our strength will never be needed, but we sleep better at night knowing that it exists." As Kethavara and her officers prepared to return to their ships, Admiral Harrison made one final statement that would echo in her mind for years to come. "Commander, we offer our friendship to all peaceful species, but we also offer our protection. The galaxy is changing, and when it does, we will be ready. The question is, will you be ready with us?" The journey back to Zephyrian space was conducted in relative silence, each member of the crew lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. As they entered hyperspace for the final time, Kethavara stared out at the stars and wondered if the age of galactic peace was truly coming to an end. Behind them, the third human battle fleet continued its exercises, preparing for wars that might never come while hoping desperately that they never would. And across the galaxy, other species continued their peaceful expansion, unaware that the balance of power had already shifted forever. The universe had not become more dangerous overnight, but now at least it had guardians who were prepared for whatever darkness might emerge from the spaces between the stars.